Hi, my name's Earl and welcome to my blackberry patch. Here I'm going to walk you through my Prime-Ark Freedoms. These are a thornless primal cane fruiting blackberry that I purchased from Norse Farms back in February of this year. They came as 2-inch plug plants about the size of a strawberry, and they've done just remarkably well since I put them in. Now it's mid-July at this point, and they're about 6 feet tall on average, with some of those branches going up to 8 and 9 feet long, and they're curling over. As you look back at these blackberries, you can see that there's a wire right at 54 inches there that they're tied to, and it's how much taller they are than that 54-inch wire. Now these are thornless, which is pretty self-explanatory. The primal cane's a little different. Typical blackberries, a cane comes out of the ground. As soon as it comes out of the ground, it's called a primal cane. It will not produce fruit, but it will grow. And it'll grow all year long, become dormant in the winter, and when it comes back to life in the spring, it's now called a florocane. Now, primal canes do not put on fruit on most blackberries. Nothing happens till the second year. In the second year, it's a florocane. It puts on fruit, and after the fruit, the cane dies. You can cut it out or you can leave it in the winter, but the cane's dead. Luckily, new primal canes are coming up along the bottom, and that will make the next year's harvest. Where these blackberries are different is the primal cane fruiting. They're actually putting fruit on the primal canes. These primal canes will give me fruit. They'll go dormant in the winter. Next spring, they're florocanes, and they'll give me a big crop in the spring. Then they'll die. However, new primal canes are coming in from the base, so as a consequence, you have a continuous supply of berries all year long. And some of these berries are just enormous. I'm getting 12, 13 grams per berry, and those are single berries. It does have a habit of double berrying up every once in a while on these, but the single berries are running 10, 12, 13 grams per berry, which is 10, 12, or 13 times larger than the wild berries I have out in the woods. Now, as I said, I got these as 2-inch plug plants. There's 35 of them. Bought them from Norse Farms, about the size of a strawberry plant. And I'm going to kind of give you an overview of what's going on with these plants from February till now, which is mid-July. And I'm getting about a half pound of berries a day, which is about as many as I can eat. So let's move on. These are what the plants looked like when I planted them. This is the day after. I apologize, I didn't take pictures of me putting them in the ground, but this is the next day. You can see how small they are. You can also see the trellis pretty well at this point. There's a black wire at 18 inches that holds the drip irrigation. There's one in the middle at 36, and there's a top wire at 54 inches that I can train these canes to as they grow up. Now keep in mind, everything at this point is called a primal cane because everything's a primal cane. Everything's first year. I planted the plants 3 feet apart, and between each plant there's a 1 gallon per hour drip emitter. One issue I had with the drip irrigation, at least initially, was that these guys are really shallow rooted and that water wasn't really moving between the plants well. It's keeping it wet deep, but not on the surface. So I was supplementing this with a water hose. I was coming back every 2 or 3 days just to make sure the top stayed wet and the plants would have an opportunity to grow. This picture was taken March 4th, about a month later. You can see it hasn't grown a lot, but they look good, and they're good and pretty. And you can actually see my water hose on the side there where I'd been giving it some water on the top. All right, it's April 7th by now, and these guys have been in the ground for about 2 months. The weather's starting to warm up. You can see the grass is nice and green coming around it, and we've been getting some rain, so it's been pretty good. I was very happy with the plant growth at this point, but boy, does it get better here in a moment. Look at the growth here. This is April 21st now, and now I have canes coming up past the 18-inch mark. You can see that I have a few of them are actually tied on to that 18-inch point. They are really starting to grow now. It's May 3rd now, and you can see that we have some canes up to the 36-inch wire, which is the point that I started tipping these canes. Now at this point, I was noticing some growth. Some of them would put up 1 cane that would go up really tall. Some plants would put up 2 canes and they weren't quite as tall, and some may even put up 3 and they were even shorter yet. So the ones that had more canes were bushier. The ones that had single cane were taller, but after tipping and a couple of months later, you really couldn't tell any difference. Still doing quite a bit of surface watering at this point to keep everything moist. Here's a cane I'm just about to tip. It's made it up to the 36-inch point. Still nice and green and soft, and it's really easy to just reach in with your fingernail and just tip that off. Here I've tipped the cane. You can see it's a nice clean cut with my thumbnail right there. About 3 inches of it I've tipped off, and we'll discard the rest of it. But this is what it looks like next to a full-size Bic lighter. I know I'm a smoker, I'm a bad guy, but it gives you some idea of how big it is. It's about 2 or 3 inches is all I removed. A couple of weeks later, May 17th, and we have a number of the canes now at the 36-inch wire. And I'm staying pretty busy at this point, trying to keep everything tied up. The ones that started off with 1 cane versus 2 versus 3 makes a difference now. As you can see, the one on the right had 1 cane, the one on the left had 3. But within a month, you couldn't tell the difference. And that's Jasper, my neighbor's dog in the background. He comes over to play with my dog all the time. Say hi, Jasper. Here's June 9th now, and most of the primary canes, the initial canes, are up above the 36-inch point now, and they're reaching to 54. They're starting to get a lot of lateral branching in the bottom now. Because of the tipping, I'm forcing branching along the stems as it comes up. So they slowed down at this point for a little while it built more of the bulk of the plant at the bottom. But it only lasted about 2 weeks of this slowdown, then it went vertical. There's a couple of canes that made the 54-inch mark, and I've tied them off. I also scattered a little bit of calcium nitrate out along the edges of it. It wasn't much, maybe a half a pound for the entire row, but I wanted to make sure they had some calcium. Some of my other plants don't do well without a little bit of calcium help, so and the nitrogen is also very handy. Between the point I tipped the plants and now, on June 9th, a lot of berries have started to form, and there's some green ones, and in this case I found one that was red, and I pointed it out, as well as more flowers. This is all coming after the tipping, and the berries are pretty big, as you can see from this picture. A few days later, I found some blackberries that were ripe. There's 10 freedoms there, as well as 10 natchez from my older plants, and 10 wild berries that I found out in the woods. These guys are big. They're big. June was miserably hot here in North Florida. You can see 100 degrees, 125 degree heat index. We had several days over 100 there. The plants still continue to grow. I didn't see any major problems with them other than a little heat damage on some of the leaves. I thought perhaps that I hadn't been given enough surface water along with the drip irrigation, but I don't think so. I think it was just heat, because when it cooled down, it got better. This picture is taken June 23rd, and they continue to grow. And in fact, this is June 27th, and we have the top wire matched on most of these plants with a few top outliers. That one's about 7 feet long. There's a closer picture of it right there. You can see how tall it is. I gave them a little bit of calcium nitrate fertilizer about this time. It wasn't much, maybe a couple of tablespoons of plant. Just spread it out along the edges, not between them, and let's get a little more calcium. Those are those 2 plants that you saw earlier. One was much taller than the other. After tipping, you really can't tell much difference at this point. And again, I'm going to leave you at this point with a time lapse of the plants growing up. I don't know if this is typical for Prime-Ark 45. I have read that they're quite vigorous and quite large, but the rest of the videos I saw online didn't really match up to this, if you will. Of course, most of those videos, the people didn't put them on a trellis initially. I think they let them grow out long. Then the plan was to tie them up later on, but I kind of kept at it the whole time, which cost me a lot of time. I was spending 2 hours a day for a while there, keeping them all tied up. I hope this video has been helpful for you. I've learned a lot. If there's anything you can share with me, I would be most open to it. So thank you very much, and have a great day.